NATO's core focus is for the alliance to essentially treat an attack on one to be an attack on all. What we are seeing here is not necessarily an attack, but rather incursions that violate sovereign airspace. And so what we are having is a collective response. It's just not necessarily taking overt military means. What I think we have seen today with this scoop that Bloomberg News had is a warning from NATO and NATO allies to communicate that should Russia continue to violate NATO airspace, there may be repercussions for those actions. A core part of deterrence, which is what NATO is all about, is trying to communicate to someone that their actions have consequences. And I think that's exactly what these NATO allies have done today. And they're trying to make it so that there isn't a potential escalation or any accident that could spiral further and lead Russia and NATO into conflict.
So, U.S., part of NATO? I mean, so I am curious. We have certainly seen from President Trump saying that Kyiv and Ukraine can win and that they're in a position to fight and win back. Specifically, to be fair, the president's gone kind of back and forth in terms of his support of Ukraine or also support of Russian President Vladimir Putin. So is the U.S. all in on this and supportive of NATO, all in 100%?
So the U.S. is a founding member of NATO and therefore has said that they are all in and that they will ensure the security of NATO and the NATO alliance. That said, if you are looking at President Trump's comments, he makes it very clear that he sees NATO likely to be a European project. So while the U.S. is part of NATO and has reaffirmed many of its collective commitments, there is this emphasis on European nations doing more. And within that, the idea that the rest of the alliance, now that they are spending 5% of GDP on defense, are going to be able to step up and take on the lion's share of the burden. And I think we've already seen that in the initial response to these airspace violations. NATO has stood up Operation Eastern Sentry in order to deter any further incursions, and the U.S. has not contributed additional forces or equipment to that. We're also seeing something very similar play out as it relates to President Trump's comments about Kyiv being able to fight Russia and take back territory that it had previously lost during Russia's invasion of Ukraine.
Yeah, that was a surprising development this week.
Absolutely. I think fundamentally what it really means is that there is no change on the ground if the U.S. were not to step up its military aid. And we don't see any indications right now that the U.S. is planning to do so. What is happening is that the U.S. is willing to provide weapons, but through NATO, and only if other NATO allies will pay for those weapons to be sent on to Ukraine. So absent any change in the provision of military aid, both equipment, additional intelligence support, and potentially taking some of the training wheels off of long-range strike capabilities, there probably isn't going to be the ability of Ukraine to be able to take back that territory.
Hey, listen, Becca, one of the things we want to ask you, you're our defense lead for Bloomberg Economics. You led studies in war games for the U.S. Department of Defense at the Center for a New American Security in the RAND Corporation. What can you, we're switching gears a little bit, but there is a story that has definitely popped up high on the Bloomberg terminal, and it has to do with the Defense Secretary, Pete Hegseth, summoning top military commanders for a meeting early next week. He apparently has not talked about what this meeting is about. What do we know? What are we hearing? How unusual is this?
I think you've hit the nail on the head. It's quite unusual. This is something where no one really knows exactly why everyone has been called back to Washington, D.C., why they're all going to be meeting at once. I can't think of a single moment in military history where every single general was located in the same room as the Secretary of Defense and senior leadership.
What does this mean? How many generals are out there, and are they been pulled from posts around the globe? Like, what are we talking about? Size and scope here.
We are talking about hundreds of people. So we are talking about some of the senior leaders in the Army, the Air Force, the Navy, so every military service. We are talking about the folks who are currently leading operations overseas. We are talking about people who are based at NATO, at European Command, at Central Command. We're talking about everyone coming from all over the globe to meet in one place all at once.
Wait,
this is truly unprecedented.
I have to ask, so who's watching everything?
Well, the good news is that the U.S. military is highly well-trained and highly capable, and there's going to be a lot of command staffs that are going to be doing a great job holding down the fort wherever it is that they are. So there is going to be oversight, but what won't be there is some of that guidance that you have from some of your top leadership and your top military officials to ensure that things are going according to plan and according to the guidance set forth by the Secretary of Defense and the Department of War.
Perhaps it's a question about organization and what Pete Hegseth, the Secretary of Defense, wants the military to look like. Just in the last 30 seconds that we have with you, we know he's made some changes at the top. He's fired some longstanding members of the military. He's done some reorganization. How would you characterize the image that he wants to portray?
The Secretary of Defense has been very clear about what his priorities are and how he wishes to remake the U.S. military in that image. One of his top priorities has been, in his words, lethality. But lethality has not been well defined. Some people think that it focuses on capability. Others tend to think that it focuses on military readiness, as well as the way in which the U.S. military presents itself. Ultimately, I think the Secretary is the only one who knows truly what he means, and perhaps maybe this meeting is an opportunity for him to communicate that more broadly.